Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. This is the second show today. We had our design thinking show this morning. That was awesome. So welcome back for those who are coming back, and welcome for those of you watching for the first time. So today is Thursday, March 24th, 2022. I'm Tulio Sirgusa, broadcasting from sunny Southern California. Joining me today is America Guerrero from Mexico City. Hi.
Hey,
You guys might have seen her in our recap show. This is America's first live Dojo Live TV. It's going to be
nervous? No, not nervous.
no nerves. It's just a
Nah,
conversation
it's
amongst
just a
friends. And
conversation.
the friend we want to join, welcome today, who's joining us, is Rob Palumbo, who is the CEO at Outpoint. Hey, Rob, good to have you with us. Thanks for joining us.
Tulio, America, thank you very much for having me. So I'm Rob. I'm an avid runner and reader. I'm based in Toronto, Ontario, and I've spent my entire career in startups doing growth marketing for various venture-backed companies. I love trying to learn what makes a company grow, what are the systems, the playbooks, the channels they need to use. And I have a partner named Claire and a little dog named Stevie, like Nix. Yeah, just really excited about being here today. So thanks for having me.
Like minds, I immediately went to Stevie Nicks when I heard the name Stevie. Good taste in music. All right. So thanks for the introduction, Rob. Let's get to know a little bit your company, Outpoint. What is it that you guys do? Why did you guys create this company? Tell us about it, please.
So Outpoint is a predictive modeling platform, and we enable high growth consumer brands, think like e-commerce businesses or mobile apps, to better understand the cause and effect and the impact of their marketing spend. So they simply plug in their revenue and cost data sets, and we produce a set of predictive models that help the marketer understand how will revenue change, how will cost change over time as I test different channels. And they can run simulations to figure out really what the optimal mix should be.
Brilliant. All right, let's see what we can learn from our topic today and the question we're going to answer, and dig right in and chive down everything that we can from today's conversation. America, if you could please introduce the topic today,
Of
that'd be
course.
great. Thank you.
Yes. AI-powered media mix modeling built for the Post-IOS14 Reality. And the question is, how can high-growth B2Cs better allocate capital across current and new marketing channels to achieve breakout growth? So please, Rob, tell us, why did you choose this topic and why is it relevant today?
Hey, thank you for the intro, America. That was great. I think the topic is that it's very difficult for high growth brands to get a handle on their costs when they're trying to achieve breakout growth, and particularly after the release of iOS 14. So in the title, it was the post-iOS 14 reality. What does that mean? Well, let's break that down. With Apple's iOS 14 operating system update, they basically enabled anti-tracking and anti-cookie technology in all of the iPhones. That made the tracking tech that a lot of advertising platforms like Facebook and other tools used to track you a lot less effective. And what happened, if you look at the public stock prices of many ad tech and ad platforms, they've fallen a lot since Apple's introduction of iOS 14. And we're really in this new post iOS 14 reality where privacy is very important to the consumer. And we need new models to figure out which ads are working and which ones aren't, because you can't track a user across the web anymore.
So it's interesting. I remember when Google made a significant change to the algorithm. I think it was it the Panda update? This was years ago. And it had dramatically impacted SEO and SEM companies. I mean, overnight, their business models changed. And everybody scrambled for months to try to figure out how to realign themselves. And basically, SEO was never the same after that update. So in many respects, Apple has done a similar things. They've turned a perpetually connected consumer into virtually unconnected instantly because of the update. So How does this, let's paint the picture a little bit for those who may not be familiar with ad tech and how that comes together,
Like me.
and how perpetually connected consumers and how that data is collected. Let's paint the picture on how it was done. How did marketers better position their advertising spend and marketing spend based on this information, and like the reality they're in now, and how can they now continue to provide the same kind of value for their stakeholders to continue to grow and innovate, et cetera. So if you could just paint that picture of what the ecosystem looked like before and what it is now, and how you guys are solving this, that would be awesome. We would love that.
Awesome. Thanks for the intro, Tulio. I think that there is a similarity to Google and the power Google has when they make a platform change. And I think this is just a broader trend where you see these salvos being fired from each big tech company at one another, where they try to use their platform power to reduce the power of the other platforms. So it's really interesting to see how this develops. To your question about what was it like before iOS 14, well, that was an era where it was more acceptable for advertisers and websites to track consumers across their browsing history, across mobile applications, and across their devices. So Facebook, for instance, has something called the Facebook Pixel that is on pretty much every website in the world that does any kind of advertising. And that is a form of cookie technology that is very advanced, designed by Facebook, that Facebook used to track you across the web. Well, all of a sudden, Apple comes along and gives their users the ability to opt out of that tracking. That completely kind of impairs the ability of Facebook and other ad platforms that rely on similar technologies to target users and also to measure effectiveness. When I say measure effectiveness, that means how much did it cost? How much revenue did I get? And that is where our company Outpoint comes in. So what we do, instead of tracking a user across the web, is we build a statistical model that basically just looks at cause and effect. As you spent on a channel, do we see some lift that occurs on the same day and in some time period after? And how can the statistical model explain that over time?
Okay, so I'm going to pass it back to America. She's got a few questions, but before we do that, I want to add a follow-up question to that. So being able to model these scenarios, is it only post-fact, or you guys are able to actually do pre-modeling to see how it could end up playing before you actually apply the spend? How does that work?
That's a great question. So we have both capabilities. We do require some historical data set to build our base models. And then the utility of the base models is once we draw like what is called a logistic regression curve, which cuts through all of the data points that we have in the historical data set to draw a predictive curve. And that curve could be used to do what if analyses. What happens if we double our spend on Facebook? What happens if we try a new channel like TV? So we have utility for both cases, both historical, what happened, and then what if we change spend or try something new.
And then are you able to set the parameters you want to accomplish? Like, do you set the metrics, or does the system tell you the metrics you realistically can have, or does it do both?
So we really try to focus on revenue and cost. So the recommendations that we deliver are either a revenue maximization recommendation. So find me the sets of spends that are going to get me the most revenue at like reasonable costs, or there'll be an efficiency scenario where we'll recommend a set of spends that will help them improve their unit economics, reduce their customer acquisition costs. So basically, depending what objective the business has, we have an optimization scenario for that.
Nice. Okay, America, do you have a question, or I answered them already?
My internet is kind of failing, so it's going to be fast. So yeah, you talk about this new reality. You talk about you were 14 on the last area of this technology. So how do you think that is going to look like in 10 years? What do you project? That is my question. I'm not an expert, so this is the first thing that I had in my mind.
I think
When we all
there's
have chips installed in our heads, that's how is it going to look like that? No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
I was going to say, Tulio, it's going to go one of two ways. Either it will be a full integration where we have zero privacy, and some people would argue we might be in this kind of environment today, or the trend of Apple and others protecting user rights and privacy continues, and we actually go in the opposite direction. And maybe like 2018 was the peak for lack of privacy. It's possible. I think it's going to be one of the two extremes, quite frankly. We're either going to be the Tulio chip or we're going to have full privacy. That's my guess.
Interesting.
When it comes to marketing and how marketing is done, I think the core principles will always remain: know your audience, have great creative, try to meet customers in moments that matter to them. And you don't need tracking, and you don't need to violate someone's privacy in order to live up to those core marketing principles. And that's why, like, our predictive models are often really good for channels that didn't even need tracking in the first place. But let's say a brand is spending onto television or they're spending with influencers. Our model works really well where they can just upload their spends. And when we see revenue occur in the days on and after those spends, we can train the model to say, okay, when that brand spends on TV, we see X lift in spend, X lift in revenue, and that's how we start to quantify value. So we're live in market right now. We have 7 customers. We raised a pre-seed in the back half of last year, and now we're just trying to aggressively grow our platform and grow our customer base.
Now, Rob, if we look at the Lumascapes for MarTech and AdTech, it is humongous. I think there's 6,000 plus players just in the MarTech space. And I remember I was in the AdTech space in 2005 when the Lumascape was still manageable. Now it's completely out of control. And there's so many different segments and areas. And a lot of people have tried to do programmatic buying, and they get some predictability and AI built into that. So what's unique? What's different about what you guys are doing? Does it bring together some of these things? Is it a separate? Can you just kind of give us an overview of where it fits into the ecosystem today?
For sure. So you bring up a good point about the Lumascape being massive. There is tons of indirect competition. I think what is unique about what Outpoint does is the utility of our predictive models, the simplicity of, okay, I just want to plug in my first party revenue and cost data sets. So what are those? Revenue could be something like Google Analytics, Stripe, or Shopify. The costs would be like your ad spends on various channels. You plug in those 2 data sets, and then Outpoint will deliver predictive models that have 90% accuracy. Here's how much revenue you're going to get. Here's what it's going to cost you. I think in the past, if you wanted to get that type of predictive power, you would probably need to have your own in-house data science team, or you need to engage with a really expensive consultancy. But now we are able to roll out the power of those predictive models in a SaaS product. And I think you couldn't build Outpoint in 2015. The data wasn't available. The machine learning tech wasn't the same. So I think and the moment wasn't the same as well when we were talking about iOS 14 and rising costs. So it's very important that we're building it now.
Excellent. Okay, so the challenge of the privacy is making it difficult to gain insights, but there's alternatives like what you guys are doing with predictive modeling and such. Does it work mostly at below the line or above the line in terms of marketing initiative, or both? Is it more based on new client acquisition or enhancing the existing, i.e. conversions, upgrades? Can you give us a little bit of a picture into these two worlds, these that are very complicated, but just for simplicity purposes, above the line, below the line? For those who might be wondering, what does that mean? Above the line is for new client acquisition. Below the line is for existing client growth and conversion. So, just curious, how is the use cases shaping? How are the use cases shaping up so far?
For sure. So, our ideal client persona is the performance marketing leader. So typically the person in charge of driving revenue through marketing spend. So it's a bit closer to below the line, but new customer acquisition can also drive revenue. And the problem that they're solving is just like the pressure to hit revenue targets and the lack of predictability. And how do I grow beyond Facebook and Google to new channels? This is absolutely a core value proposition for many of our customers, helping them validate channels that before Outpoint were hard to measure, like out of home and influencers, and then also understand where they're hitting diminishing returns on current channels like Facebook and Google, so they can actually reallocate their budget to try something new. So in terms of like our customer base, it's growing. We 3x'd our growth from Q4 of 2021 to Q1 of 2022 on the revenue side. And really what we're trying to validate is, do customers use our recommendations? Do they trust them? And are they seeing the revenue growth and the cost improvements that we had predicted?
Great. I have a question for you, Rob. How do you evaluate features? Do you have user base that you work with?
Yeah, so we have 7 signed customers. If you go to our website, you can see some of those logos at outpoint.app. And
Oh yeah, I remember.
The customer is typically the performance marketing leader in charge of allocating the budgets. So we work closely with those marketing leaders to understand their needs. I used to be in that seat before Outpoint, which is what motivated me to start this company, because I realized that costs were out of control and there was a lack of good tooling to manage a cross-channel marketing mix and understand cause and effect. So that is what motivated me to build this company.
Nice.
Excellent.
America, you got one more?
Not really.
All right. Well, I got one. So just curious, like which verticals are you seeing adopting the platform more and why? Like what are some of the metric improvements they are reporting? Is there a trend that you're seeing versus in terms of what verticals are having the best results with this?
Yeah, I think the best fit for Outpoint is a digital consumer brand that has like a completely online conversion funnel. And it typically will be a product that can be sold in a higher frequency. So e-commerce fits into this category. There's also like fintech and digital healthcare that could fit into this category. So really just digital consumer businesses that sell at a pretty high frequency and rely on paid marketing to grow. They're a best fit with Outpoint. In terms of metric improvement, I'll give the case study of there's a fintech brand we work with. They do life insurance online. After 4 months of using Outpoint, they've grown their monthly revenue by 53% while bringing their cost per acquisition down by 7%. So amazing to have those. Typically, those go up hand in hand as you hit diminishing returns and scale up. So amazing to have those go in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Very nice.
You told us about how the future will look like. Like there are 2 ways, right? So how I know that technology changes every month. So how do you keep with innovation?
Yeah, it's a great question. I personally spend way too much time on Twitter, tech news and innovation.
Well, that could put you in a bad mood too, just spending a lot of time on Twitter.
It's get dark. But in terms of our team, we actually have a function called research. So we have 2 people with the title of research in their role, and their job is innovation. It's R&D, it's model development, figuring out what the best practices are in machine learning and data science. So like our research team publishes their own research, they submit papers to conferences, and they produce a lot of great new innovative features. So I think like organizationally, that really helps us keep on the cutting edge. And then, having a awareness of what other players are doing, because the ad tech space is huge, as you noted earlier, Tulio. And there's a lot of really interesting trends and learnings that we can all take from one another.
So you mentioned something interesting. You've got R&D that are constantly keeping the pulse on innovation and looking for ways to continuously innovate. Can you tell us a little bit about how are you fostering that mindset both within the organization and also you have a user base you mentioned you work with? how do you get them to cooperate as a community, if you will, to help shape the product, shape the offering, and in many cases, shape the market? What are some of the lessons you've learned that's worked well? What are some of the things you suggest you should avoid? Can you share some of those with us?
For sure. I think, I mean, growth mindset is like very core to what we do, both literally as a product, but also I think the kind of organization we try to build. And when you talk about fostering a culture that rewards and supports that, I think it starts with who you hire. So there are specific principles and behaviors that we hire for at our company that, you know, we have literally put into scorecards that we want to see like how they're ranking against these kind of principles. And they include, we are all owners. So we each embrace responsibility and we're accountable, growth for all, commitment to our own personal and the growth of our teammates, customer obsession. We have a set of principles that really are the core building blocks behind creating this within Outpoint. And then with our customers, they're naturally like high growth people. They're typically in charge of big multi-million-dollar budgets and they're trying to grow very quickly. So they're working with Outpoint because they want to grow faster.
Awesome. We lost America. There's a fire alarm going off in our building. Live, something's happening there. Okay. Well, hopefully everything's going to be okay. So we just started touching a little bit about the company culture, and I want to dig into that a little bit more if you don't mind.
Sure.
First, I'm curious, how do you guys price your services and product? How do you make money? Is this a service like a concierge consulting where you help them set it up, or it's self-service? How does someone become successful in using the platform?
Yes. So in terms of our pricing and how we make money, we are a B2B SaaS company. So we charge a subscription for access to the predictive models, and they get refreshed on a periodic basis. And we're increasing the frequency of those refreshes all the time. So the customer pays a SaaS fee starting at $2,500 per month, and that scales up if they add additional features or additional things for the model. The first couple of weeks are a data onboarding process where we integrate with the various channels, do the first sets of model design. So each customer gets their own bespoke media mix model. And then once it's deployed to the SaaS platform, we just update that on a periodic basis. And the customer can introduce new channels, new products, and it'll update over time once those data feeds are live.
So the licensing fee, the subscription fee, does that cover X amount of models, or is it unlimited? How is that structured now?
So our an initial entry price is just one model. So let's say, e-commerce company in a single geography, they'd be covered. But maybe they want to model out different geographies. They want to look at Mexico versus USA. There would be an additional cost if they wanted to do separate models for those different geographies.
Got it. All right, cool. All right. So it's paid by the drink, right? Whatever you need, wherever you need it. That's right. That's how it goes. Let's talk a little bit about the company itself. What makes it unique. Some of our audience members could be potential employees sometime in the future or near term. Can you share with us? You touched on a little bit some of your guiding principles. Can you share a little bit more about what's the day in the life at Outpoint? What kind of people you tend to attract? Why do they come work with you? What's the key thing you're hearing that they like about Outpoint? Paint a little picture about the day in and day out culture, if you don't mind.
Sounds good. So we're a team of 10 people. We are at the pre-seed stage. In terms of the composition of those 10 people, most of our team is technical. So either on the engineering or the data science side. Or research, like I mentioned earlier. And in terms of what attracts folks to work on this problem, I think it is the intersection of working on a data science / AI ML problem and consumer growth. That intersection seems to attract a certain type where you kind of get the best of both worlds. You get the B2B SaaS AI business, and you get exposure to the B2C consumer landscape. So for someone who hasn't really selected a vertical, Outpoint's a pretty compelling value proposition because you get to learn about both. You get to see how a B2B SaaS company scales. And then for all of our clients, you get to see how they get to grow as well. In terms of our team, we are a remote team, although the majority of our team is based in Toronto, which is where our HQ is. The kind of personality type is, like, I would say, very data-driven based on what our company does, hungry, and supportive as well. Like, we're all Canadian, so I think we're kind to one another. We care about one another, and we know that we're trying to optimize for the long term here. It's just early days for Outpoint, and we need to support each other as we go through the good days and maybe the days that aren't always as great. I know, Tulio, you've worked on your own startups. There's ups and downs, but I think the ups make it completely worthwhile and definitely outweigh.
I think the founder of Twitter said it best. The startup is like jumping off a cliff and assembling the parachute on your way down. That's the experience. It's not for the faint of heart, but it sounds like you guys have some great foundational things in place that will shape the future of the company. So congratulations with that. So we're coming up on time, and I want to ask you one final question. It's a little bit more personal about your experience as an entrepreneur building this business. There's people out there who do perfectly well working for bigger companies. Some have taken risks in startups that didn't pan out so well. Some have lost their shirts in that process. They're afraid to do it again. That's like me. So, words of advice, like what would you share in terms of your personal experience? Has the journey so far been worth it personally? What would you say has been the learning lessons for you as an entrepreneur?
For me, I think something that I always advise, it's a particular comment for new grads or people who are new to the workforce, is one of the best ways to learn about becoming an entrepreneur is to work for other entrepreneurs. So one piece of advice I have for new to workforce people or new to entrepreneurship, if they want to get a feel for startups, is to try to identify promising startup companies near you, or in actually, they don't need to be near you anymore. It could be anywhere. And get some reps under your belt working for experienced founders. That's what I did before Outpoint. That's my probably number one piece of advice for people wanting to break into startups. Try to get some advice and some good mentorship under some other founders. You'll get exposed to building the plane while flying, while not necessarily having to be the pilot. Maybe you'll be the co-pilot, and that's good preparation for eventually the day where you do have to build the plane while flying. So yeah.
That is really great advice. I mean, sometimes the new graduates come out and want to go straight to building the next unicorn. It doesn't really work that way most of the time. You need that time with people that you can learn from and you can take notes and grow from. So thanks for sharing that advice. It's been great to have you with us, Rob. We wish you a lot of continued success. It sounds as though you are on the precipice of something that's really needed, that's been scratching the head a lot of marketers and advertisers. Like, how do we work and navigate in this new reality with privacy at the helm? And having the access to predictive modeling and really tying in the ROI metrics to your efforts is so key. I mean, that's been the promise from day one of MarTech and AdTech. It hasn't always delivered, but it sounds as though you guys are on the right path to be able to deliver on that promise. So congratulations. Stay with us just a minute as we go off the air. I want to announce really quickly what we got coming up next week. This is the last show of the week. On Monday, come back at 12 o'clock Pacific. We're going to have the recap show where we recap this week's live shows. That's at 12 o'clock Pacific. We're going to spend 10 minutes just recapping all the conversations we had and the key points that we thought were interesting. Then on March 29th, we're going to talk with Belzazar Lepe, who's the CEO and co-founder at Serbi, about building a company in the 2020s versus 2000. That should be an interesting conversation. And then we're going to talk with, the day after that, with Adam Gordon, who's an instructor at IT Pro TV. and we're talking about preparing for today's security landscape. Security is a big market, big challenge, and so come check out those shows. We'll announce them again on Monday at the recap show. Any new ones that we add on, we will announce it on Monday as well. Have a great rest of your week, everyone. Be safe, and don't forget to have some fun.